www.offthecorner.net. You're watching the Fact Project here on the DJ Tiger channel. FACT is an acronym that stands for Fundamental African Centered Thought. The goal here on the Fact Project is to convey some facts and some information to members of our community. We have joining us today two very special people, in my humble opinion, coming to us live from the city of Philadelphia, the great Mama Gail and Baba Horace. Peace and Black Power. Thank you for joining me on the Fact Project today.
Peace and love.
Yes.
Bliss.
Our pleasure.
Most definitely. Okay, so today's your first time on the Fact Project.
Yes.
And just to familiarize my audience with who you are, I would ask you to give a thumbnail sketch of your background for me, if you would, both of you.
Okay. I am education advocate, community activist, and I began my advocacy when our youngest daughter, who is now 48 years old, was in elementary school. And there was a pivotal day that changed me forever when it comes to education in Philadelphia. That was the day that I sat before regional superintendent that was announcing to the parents that the school system, the way it was at the time, was going to be transformed. So they were going from a K to 6 model to a K to 8 model. But at that time, they weren't talking about K to 8 model. They were talking about a middle school. We had junior high school at the time. We had K to 6, 7th, 8th, 9th, and then 10th, 11th, 12th. Well, I asked him because I worked at the phone company, and I knew that if something didn't work at the phone company, if it didn't work when they tried it, they'd go back to what they had until they found something different. That was my take on what was happening in my work environment. So I raised my hand and I asked the superintendent if there was a time period set aside, if this system that they were going to do, if there was a time period set aside where they would go back to what they had now. He told me in a very, very rude way, he gave me an answer that my question was so ludicrous he wasn't even going to answer it. Is that what I've told you, right? And so that began my advocacy because I had never been talked to like that in a school environment. I had just taken my children from private school and put the two of them in public school. So I wasn't used to that. And I wasn't going to get used to that. So that was the day that I became an advocate. And that was like 38 years ago. And so I've been involved. And I started there in her elementary school, cleaning tables in the lunchroom, doing all kinds of things that parent volunteers did. And then we owned a travel agency at the same time. So they knew that I had closed my travel agency to volunteer full time. So they asked me to do trips for the school. So then I started doing educational travel. When my daughter went on to middle school, I got even more involved because I saw the things that were happening to our middle school children. And so that's how I began. So my husband can tell you how he began.
Good morning. Well, I began as when I got hired by the school district back in 2005. My advocacy begun. And what I did was I brought my unique set of skills, being pretty much a handyman, stationed in different buildings. And what was happening was the lack of service that was being provided as far as maintenance to our schools. So I had the ability to fix things, and I just went on and fixed them. Now, my unique experience was that I was a relief engineer. And what a relief engineer is, he goes to different buildings when the engineer is not there and relieves the engineer. So I can actually say I've been in over 100 different schools. So I got to see the politics that was going on, because it's one thing being someone outside talking about what should be done, But when you're actually in it, then you can understand better what is not being done. So that's the way I feel now. And then plus, with my family being in it, I just piggyback off of them to support them and give them another inside perspective. And mine was pretty much from the facility side of it, because here again, to date, everything, in my opinion, is a mess.
Okay, understood. So, as it relates to Black consciousness, most of us weren't raised this way. We kind of had to learn it on our own.
Yeah.
And so, what was both your individual journey into Black consciousness? Since we weren't being taught this at home, we weren't being taught this in the schools, religious institutions wasn't teaching it. So, how did you come upon Black consciousness originally?
For me, I started going to meetings, but I think that my consciousness came through F.A.C.T. That was a that was a program at Temple University that some elders from my community, some women got together. I think it was three of them, and went to the university because the university was in the community, and so they allowed the community to come in. There was a there was a place that you could go in the evening and learn everything. You name it, you could learn it. It wasn't technical, like it wasn't vocational, but it was everything else. And so you had people teaching everything possible in that evening session, and it was during the week. To be able to go there, because I didn't have Black history, I went to work in high school, and I had world history, and I didn't see myself. So let me back up, because if I thought about it, I go all the way back to eighth grade. I had a teacher, a white male teacher, that I knew was afraid of us.
Mm.
I knew he was, you could see he had a fear of us. You could see he didn't know how to teach. And you could see that he didn't love us. I got used to being loved in school. I can tell you, my kindergarten teacher, I don't know what color she was, whether she was white or Black. She was very fair, like my grandmother's mother, very fair, like my grandmother's mother. Her name was Miss Weiler. I was telling a child 3 days ago. I remember Miss Waller, my kindergarten teacher. I remember the perfume she wore every day. I remember she never was absent. She was never late. I remember the graham crackers and the little carton of milk that I got from her loving hands. I knew that I was loved in my community, and my consciousness probably came because everybody was Black.
Mm.
Everybody. We had a doctor that lived next door, Dr. Doman. We had on the other side a family, and the father worked for the city, and he had about 6 children. We had people that worked as domestic. My grandmother cleaned white people's houses, but everybody in our community was Black, unless it was a bill collector. And people knew it was a bill collector. Even our insurance man was Black,
Mm.
right? So that consciousness was subconscious, right? In the beginning. And then going to school and seeing people that looked like me, that I wanted to emulate. I wanted to dress like, I wanted to talk like, I wanted to walk like them, right? And then I go to junior high school, and there's these white people coming in, and this young man who looked like he was probably just out of college. And I looked at him day by day. I watched him. And I said to my classmates, when he comes in today, don't say anything. Don't do anything. I don't care what he asks you. I don't care what he says. We're going to do a freeze.
Mm.
And I sat there, and they sat there, and they followed every instruction that I gave them. And the man turned red. He was so upset. He stood there. He's about 6'2", 6'3". He wore loafers every day, penny loafers. He wore khaki pants every day. He wore the I don't the pinstripe shirt. I forgot what you call him, some kind of boy. It's a term for it, but he was just it was like a uniform, right? And I watched how he interacted with us, and I said that was enough for me. So he came in and he was very, very upset. He turned beet red. That was hard because he was pale. And I'm not saying that to be facetious. It really upset him that nobody responded to anything. So he got angry. He was standing in front of the class, went to the door, and the door, you turn the knob and push the door out. He got up. I wouldn't get him. I did not get out my seat because I knew he knew it was me. I don't know how, but I knew he knew it was me. And so I stayed in my seat, and everybody got up and they turned the knob and pushed right on past him and left the room. So I got suspended. I got suspended for it. And it was okay because I learned the power that we have when we work together. I had already bushed my hair. I had stopped saluting the flag in the eighth grade because when I listened to what they wanted us to say, it didn't make sense to me. Because in elementary school, they were showing us film about the Holocaust in elementary school. I couldn't understand what that had to do with us. But at the same time, we had people here like Reverend Melvin Floyd, bless his soul, who was a police, I think, detective, and he went around with a casket on top of his vehicle, and he would come in and talk to us. And also, the turning point for me was when I saw a black model, the first model um, that was on one of the patterns, right? I think it was Beverly somebody, I can't think right now. But all those things were pivotal for me. And then later, years, and I'm going to jump ahead, years and years later, because I kept praying. For years, I'm in a school thing. I'm sitting with principals from all over the country and different parts of the world. People were coming in talking about education, being owner of a travel business. It was kind of difficult for me to sit and listen to them, having traveled and knew people that lived in other countries, right? We had people coming here from other countries to talk about their school system. And I'm saying, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. So I was talking about the fact that when I was on my way to a university in New York, the teachers' college, and the cab driver asked me why was I going there, and I said I was going to a conference. And he said to me, he was Caucasian. He said to me, we all became teachers during the Vietnam War. Instead of going to the military, we became teachers. I finally had my answer while we were inundated with so many white males in our schools in front of us. And it seemed for me later, the torch was passed to their mates or their daughters or their sisters. And because I'm saying that, I would hear research and they say like 74 to 86% of the people teaching us were white females. So I felt like had passed the torch later on. So being around all these years, that for me, what I just said was pivotal in my growth, but also the fact that 30 years ago, we had a black female superintendent, Dr. Constance Clayton. And the board members pretty much were black females. And I sat month after month after month at every meeting that I could get to. Every time there was an opportunity to be in front and hear what was going on, I made sure to be that. Not in the back of the room, but in the front of the room to see what was going on and be an advocate for our people. And I used to say, and do continue to say, I speak for those that don't speak for themselves, that can't speak for themselves, and those that won't speak for themselves. So when there's big groups of parents, I sit back.
Is it? Well, mine is just plain and simple, and it's basically the black male role models that I grew up around. Starting with my father. And living on a block where, as a child, it was safe. We played all the games. It was no electronic games. Everything was like either board games or, you put up your basketball court or you made your little skateboard. We were making skateboards back then, with the boxes and the skates and all. So we was making that stuff. And everybody learned to use their hands. Everybody conversated with each other. You know, um, Here again, I was, even when I got on the workplace, I was around some black male role models that were strong and conscious. And stuff just was passed down to me. And, I understand basically exposure is what our children need. They need to be exposed to things, period. And more positive things. They need to be taken out of the neighborhood, travel, things of that nature. So mine's here again, it was just a simple life, and I was safe. The community made me feel safe, even though there was a period of what we would call gang war time, where you had to watch your different neighborhoods you had to walk in. But here again, I had the unique experience of watching out for the black gangs in my neighborhood. And then when I went across town to a trade school, had to worry about the white gangs in that neighborhood. So I was I was being chased by both of
Wow.
them, and but I made it through all that. I laugh about it, but I'm serious about it. Because here I'm still alive, and I'm sure some of them white guys are still alive too. They chased us. They got some good jobs out here that probably would still have that same mindset of, we need to be in our place, so to speak.
Mhm.
You,
Of
you
course.
know,
Of course. Okay,
so
so now you both talk about yeah, well, you're part of a radio show called Groundings, and you do a segment called No More 0%. And shout out to Brother Shamari. I can't mention
Yes,
Groundings
yes.
without mentioning Brother Shamari. You do a segment of the program called No More 0%. What is No More 0%? How do you explain that?
Well, 0%, believe it or not, they rate their schools with at one time performance levels. And they still have that today. It's called the SPRE report, School Progress Report on Equity in Education. And one of the matrix was performance. And believe it or not, the school district was listing schools that came in at 0%. And we're talking 0 out of 100, not 0 out of 10, 0 out of 100. So what I did was, I'm a data guy. I put it all in a simple form in a simple book, and I passed it to Brother Samar, and I said, "Brother, you need to look at this, because we had like 52 high schools, and out of 52 high schools, 25 of them was coming in at 0% in student performance. So he looked at it and he said, you know what, you need to come on the air and talk about this." So that's how it started. That's basically what we still have today. Schools coming in at 0% in performance. And I always ask the question at a school board meeting: how do you achieve 0%? Which I never got an answer for. So, you know, that's the explanation of how that show came about.
Okay, so 0% means out of 100% of the student body, no one's getting promoted to the next grade. No one's reading on grade level.
Mhm.
What is
Right. They
0?
do a percentage of the whole school, and it comes out to zero. I mean, of course, you're going to have some that some are passing and some are not. But as a whole, the school is coming in at zero. And
Okay,
then
now
we
this,
have, to the other side of that, we have a school where it's coming in at 98%. So
and so the schools that are at 0%, are these the schools in the black neighborhoods?
where they're what they
Mm.
would call them neighborhood high schools. So whatever neighborhood throughout the different cities, because we have different neighborhoods, different sections of the city. So the schools are the different categories for high schools will be neighborhood, um, special admit, and then citywide high schools. Where you would apply to go to your neighborhood, or apply to go to a citywide, or go to a special admit. And so, I mean, these schools come in at in other words, they're everywhere in the city.
Okay, so how is it possible for a school to perform at 0% achievement? Like, what facilitates that?
Well, facilitates that is the test scores. Basically, that's it. What they have their PSSA test, Pennsylvania State something something assessment.
Okay, so this is the standardized test we're talking about.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have your standardized tests in K to 8, and then you have your keystones in your 9th to 12th. And
Okay.
so both categories or testings, we have schools coming in at 0%.
And now, what is your opinion on standardized tests? Because I know in some places parents opt out of letting their children even take the standardized test. So, what is your assessment of the standardized test? Is that a good way to measure where a student is, or is that just for the school to look as if they're doing something?
Well, for us as outsiders looking in, that's the only thing we have to see if somebody's really doing their jobs, because they tried that here, where they just want to have it rely on a teacher giving a grade. So can you imagine if they did take out the standardized testing and just had a grade system all the way through, and then you have our community graduating and then trying to achieve a job, and then here they can't even read on grade level, do math on grade level. These things right now, because there is a standardized test, there is a form of letting the public know that, hey, these schools are failing. So my opinion is keep the testing. Plus, when you apply for a job, sometimes you have to take a test. So it's just as simple as that. Be familiar with taking a test.
Okay, understood. So now, you both attend school board meetings regularly. What can you tell us about what transpires at the school board meetings?
I can say that they start off by usually giving a report. And what is interesting to me is, especially now, I'm looking at the graphs, and for many people in the audience, and I'll speak for myself right now, it's difficult for me because oftentimes I'm watching the things that are happening. Like, for instance, I'm looking at the lighting, I'm looking at the colors on the charts that they put up, and it's like a game. It's like strategically, this is me. Horace is all into data. I think it would be called the aesthetics. That's what I'm looking at. And I'm also looking at the people in the audience. The data, when I'm looking at the arrows and how they measure things, I see beyond what they're posting. And so I wait. My husband's a data person. He's all into it. But at a school board meeting, they start off with the data. The superintendent usually talks. They give accolades to somebody. They make announcements, and then the people are to speak. The reason why, when it comes to the school board meetings, I have issues because we have 2 minutes to speak. That is not a lot of time when you may have, even sometimes it might only be 15 people. Instead of extending the time, they don't. So a man came the other day, and they told him he couldn't speak because of the rules. And I was saying, well, the last time we were here or the time before, it was a different rule. If they didn't have a lot of people, you could sign on when you came into the room. Well, the guy was told he couldn't speak. And I thought, these rules change. So when you talk about policy and procedure, their procedure may change and we weren't aware of it. We're not aware of it. That's a problem for me, because we are the people. See, back during a time when it was the state taking over, we went to Harrisburg, and they told us at that time they don't even have to hear what you have to say. That's what they told us on the state level. And that was during the time we had this, not the school board, but it was called the SRC, School Reform Commission. And so now it's almost like sometimes it's almost like they're using or reverting back to the rules that existed during the SRC days. So I have a problem with school board meetings and how they're being run. That's just me. But Horace he can talk about it differently.
Well, first of all, this is not an elected school board, so this school board is appointed by the mayor, which goes through city council. They get the list first, and then they give their approval. Then it passes on to the mayor. Then the mayor says yes or no. Basically, it's a conversation without being a conversation. In other words, it's just one sided. People have their concerns. They get 2 minutes to speak. There's a maximum of 30 speakers. And the whole problem with a board meeting is that we don't know how the board is thinking. We have ideas that would truly make a difference, but we don't know how the board is thinking. And that's the problem with, we've been at this for years. And it's, even to the point where they just appointed a new school board. And it's the same thing, procedure going on. We show up, we give written testimony, we have good ideas, but we don't hear a response. So we don't know how they're thinking. And I think if we could just get them to say something, and we know once they say something, it really opens up a whole can of worms. But we need the board to say something so we can understand their thinking. We have 9 individuals that we don't know. And what's funny, the last board meeting a week ago, the president had the nerves to say we're a group of 9 talented individuals.
Wow.
Well, y'all sure not making no difference being
Right.
9 talented individuals.
And this is the new school board.
And this is the new
members.
school. So we got a meeting coming up on Thursday, and I will remind them about you 9 talented individuals better start doing something.
That's
So
funny.
you're not living up to your mission statement. So
That's funny.
that's how I feel about the school board meetings.
Okay. I'm going to share a video that I want you to both take a look at, and then I have a question about the video because it's talking about systemic racism explained, or the system of structural racism. It's about a minute. Just watch the video, and then I have a question about the video.
This is Jamal. Jamal is a boy who lives in a poor neighborhood. He has a friend named Kevin who lives in a wealthy neighborhood. All of Jamal's neighbors are African American, and all of Kevin's neighbors are white. Because Jamal's school district is mostly funded by property taxes, his school is not very well funded. His classrooms are overcrowded, his teachers are underpaid, and he doesn't have access to high-quality tutors or extracurricular activities. Kevin's school district is also funded by property taxes, so his school is very well funded. His classrooms are never crowded, his teachers are very well paid, and he has access to high-quality tutors and lots of extracurricular activities. Kevin and Jamal live only a few streets away from each other. So how come they're growing up in such different worlds with such different opportunities for success? The answer has to do with America's history of systemic racism.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. The question becomes, how much of an impact does property tax have on the fact that children are performing at 0%? The way the school is funded, how much of that impacts what you're calling 0%?
Well, when we talk about property taxes, they just doubled our property taxes. Even though they want to say that we're underfunded, we live in a poor neighborhood. We live in a poor neighborhood that pays high taxes. So here's these narratives again. Yes, the schools are overcrowded, but they're only overcrowded in the area of the white students where they live at. And see, that's why here we have a flight of people want to leave our neighborhood or the black neighborhood to go to a white neighborhood for a better education. But what's happening is nobody is getting a better education, white or black. So that's the thing. So when they say, even here, a narrative of our school district is grossly underfunded, our school district is not grossly underfunded. That's number one. Number two, when they say our teachers are underpaid, our teachers are not underpaid. So we're talking starting salary $51,000 plus
50-something
plus benefits, at least $50,000 in benefits, going all the way up to $100,000. So these narratives or false narratives all is getting in the way of us really going against what they would call, what we would call, I would call it defending the poor school district, or defending a failing school district. They throw these,
not poor.
yeah, they're defending a failing school district by throwing out these false narratives. They want the people to go to Harrisburg. They ask for more money. We don't have to go to anywhere. They have the money. We have 5 unions that work within the school district. All the contracts are being met. So hey, we don't have those issues that they want people to believe we have.
And that's our opinion.
And that's our opinion.
And it's can I just add that when it comes to the school district budget, we have a $3 billion budget, right?
2.2.
So it's two now. It's not 3 billion.
It's 2.2 for the public school side.
Okay, and what is it? What's the whole budget? 3 billion.
Yeah, the whole budget is around about 3 to 4 billion, because what we have is charter schools. So we have a certain percentage of the budget goes to charter schools, a certain percentage of the budget goes to public schools. So the half of it goes to public is 2.2.
I think that the biggest problem that we have is in education, people are moving from city to city, state to state in positions of power or authority in schools. And some of these people that are coming into the school districts are not equipped to run the school districts that they're being assigned to or being appointed to. And I'll use an example. The previous school board superintendent brought in a CFO, and he had never handled more than I believe it was based on what I read in the paper, $1.8 billion budget. Well, at the time, their total budget was $3 billion. So he came in from a smaller system. The superintendent that brought him in came from a smaller system. We have a superintendent now that came in from a smaller school system. I think that they're bringing people in, and these people are not equipped to handle the situation. So what has happened repeatedly, from my observation, is they try to reduce the school district because they can't handle the numbers. So I remember we had schools that had 2,000 children in them back in the day. We had a Black female superintendent that was in charge, and I believe the number was about 300,000 children in the school district at the time. No one was talking about making it a smaller district at the time, and she had been doing a really, really good job running the school district. And I'm gonna give you so back to the school board meetings. This is a superintendent who, bless her soul, Dr. Constance Clayton, when you called to say you wanted to speak at a school board meeting, immediately she would call the department, the person that needed to fix whatever was broken, whatever your problem was. She called them. Many issues never came to the school board meeting. They were handled from the door, from the phone call they were handled. And here we have a school board that we sit at monthly, and we hear all kinds of complaints. They're sent to the back of the auditorium to talk to somebody. I don't think, this is just my personal opinion, I don't think 30%, I don't think 40% of the issues that are brought to their attention get solved. I don't think so. And I think that it's not just on the upper level. I think that we have people coming in from other cities and states on administrative levels that are beneath the superintendent, the deputy superintendents, etc. But I learned a long time ago that it takes about 3 years when you come in Philadelphia just to get acclimated to the school district, let alone the city. So they're moving into another community, another city, another state. And this is a very different city because it was the beginning of everything. Okay. we were the everything. Wall Street, everything started here. So I think it's very different than everywhere else.
Okay, now the video goes on to talk about redlining and how redlining deliberately keeps wealth out of the Black neighborhood. You're saying that redlining is not impacting the budgeting of the schools?
I think that how people moving in and is affecting the schools is that many of the people that get contracts to build, this city is being built up like you wouldn't believe. And what happens is they continue to give abatements to people who are building, to contractors. You have too many people coming in. We wouldn't have any problems. And I talk about this a lot. We would not have the kind of problems that we have. They say we need money, we need money, we need money. But they make some of the most crazy decisions how they get rid of property, right?
Mm-hmm.
The amount of money that they're charging for them, and then the amendments that are made after they purchased a building.
Mm-hmm.
There are all these abatements and amendments, and it's causing a deficit. But people would rather talk about the fact that taxpayers need to raise, they need to raise the amount of money for taxpayers, but it's not the tax base. It's the tax base that they're not getting as a result of abatements.
Yeah, and the redlining is is handled through employment now, because the problems we have in the poorest, largest city in the country, poorest, largest city in the country, is that they're just not hiring Black people. The school district is not hiring Black people. Different corporations or whatever, the unions are not taking in Black people as apprentices. This is a very,
Your opinion.
in my opinion, this is a very racist city. That's just the bottom line. The red line of the past. Hey, I don't have the money today to even consider going buying something that that costs a lot, because I don't have the income there. And what's sad is, here again, a district would talk about a teacher shortage, but there is no teacher shortage in Philadelphia. The problem is you're not hiring Black teachers, and there is a pool of Black teachers that they can hire. So,
And then I think that and I don't even know, people have these terms that they use, the redlining and all of that,
mhm.
but I really, to be honest with you, I I just look at what it is, period. I don't look at the terms that are used. I know that if I'm going past building after building after building, and I look up at the construction site and there's not a Black face there, not one Black face on the construction site, there's something wrong with that. When I go in a building and I only see Black people as entertainment or security, there's something wrong with that. When I go in a store and it's a supermarket and there's only three people on the cash register, and I already know people didn't come to work because we're taught how to be work ready in school. Young people have not been given what they need to do to have, excuse me, to be successful in the workplace. So we have a deficit when it comes to people that look like us in the workplace because they were not taught. We have young people leaving high school that can't read, they can't write, they can't tell time, and they can't sign their name. We have young people that spent 12, 13, maybe 14 years in a school somewhere in Philadelphia, and they don't know how to fill out an application. They don't know how to do a whole lot of things. And I believe that many of the reasons are who's in front of them, who's making decisions. I don't care if you Black, white, blue, or purple. If you're doing a good job, you're doing a good job. And too many times, white folks in the schools have chased good Black people out of the schools. Now you have children whose behavior is off the hook. We have children that should not be in a regular school setting. And I would tell people, for those who have children and they did all their best to keep their children safe and in good schools, etc. All it takes is interaction with one child the same age, 5-10 minutes, and your whole world can be turned upside down because of that child that didn't get everything your child got. We're in and out of schools often. There are many special ed children that should be in a separate situation because they're in the classroom and they're disrupting the classroom. They're causing problems, right, for the other children when it comes to learning. We have got to take a look, and an honest look. I keep telling them to be honest. God told me many years ago when I kept praying, please, I need to understand what I'm seeing, what I feel, what I think. God gave me these words: roadblockers, opportunists, neutralizers, and gatekeepers. And I added just plain liars. People have put themselves or got put in situations that has caused too much harm. And my whole thing at this point is I declare, I decree, I claim enough is enough. This is over. This system has been broken for generations. When people talk about parents and their behavior, well, those parents went to the same schools in the same communities that their children and grandchildren are going to, and they didn't learn the same way these children are not learning. They didn't learn as children. I'm looking at people who are now 50, 51 years old that I advocated for. They're now, some of them are grandparents, right? Many of these young people have not gotten what they were supposed to get, and it feels criminal to me.
Okay, now, Mama Gail and Baba Horace.
Yes.
We know that Black children can graduate from high school with a diploma, and at that point, they will know everyone else's history and culture and not know their own history and culture. I think it's safe to say Black children need an education that affirms them and gives them confidence.
Absolutely.
They're not getting that in the public school. How much of a role does the curriculum play in this 0% achievement? Because a lot of students are just disinterested because it doesn't reflect their reality and they can't relate to it.
Well, I just talked to you about me seeing about the Holocaust when I was in elementary school, and I couldn't see what that had to do with me. I'm 69 years old. And so I can tell you that there was just a new curriculum purchased by the school district. And I haven't seen a curriculum yet that really dealt with who we are. But how do you ask people whose ancestors are part of what happened to us in history to tell us our history?
Exactly.
I don't trust that.
Exactly.
And that's why I always say we got to be inside and outside. We have to be the same as our ancestors were. They're not going to. And I remember something that happened a few years ago, and I think it came on Facebook or something, where a woman was upset because of the information that a teacher told her child about why we were here, how we came here. And my point is, when I was in a slave house, Goree Island, in 2010, a Caucasian woman told her child that we were brought there because we were bad.
Wow.
We had representatives. I was a delegate from the U.S., but there were people there from all over the world, from the Black world. And this white woman happened to come on the ship or the boat when we came over. And that's what she told her child. Now, I always think people that think like that are in all kinds of positions. We think in terms of education because we're there all the time. But the same thing when you go to the doctor, when you go to a lawyer, when you go to whomever you go to who is in a professional situation. How do they feel about who we are? What do they think about who we are? That's how they address you. That's how they deal with you, based on what they believe you are or are not. When you walk in with this color skin, unless you're all dressed up in a suit and tie, and that don't even matter sometimes, right? But when you walk in, there's an assumption made many times that has nothing to do with who you are, what you know, and what you can do. Our children are faced with that. When I sat at meetings and they would say, we want them to come to school at 8 o'clock in the morning for English. And they knew our children had a problem getting to school at 10 o'clock, right? And these teachers want to get in and get out. When it comes to parent meetings, I was told by a principal that our teachers, her staff, lived about an hour and a half from school. So we have to have meetings at such and such a time. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is a parent meeting. What does their root home have to do with our parents and us meeting? So too many times we're not really having conversations about what needs to be talked about. Right now in Philadelphia, we just been through all these meetings called a facilities tour, a facilities listening tour.
Yes.
And we've been listening.
Mhm.
We've been speaking, but we've been listening. And my husband kept saying, based on all the things they come up with, air conditioning, air quality, parking, playgrounds, the things that they think, because it wasn't a whole lot of us in the meetings, right? The things they think are important. And he was saying, well, wait a minute. How is it with these issues? And I'm paraphrasing, speaking for you, husband. How is it that the Black children still are doing less than everybody else? How are you teaching around the Black child? In the same situation, you have one of the schools in one of the groups that they looked at, because they're looking at third grade and eighth grade, is it?
Third grade,
eighth, and 11th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
And so he looked and he said, wait a minute. In one group we looked at, 90 something percent of the children
Mhm.
were successful.
Right.
And then you had some schools that he looked at, some of the, no, that's not the whole school. That's just some of the children in the school.
Great percentages, at
A
least.
percentage. And so other schools, we talked about the fact that it's insufficient data. Well, how you have insufficient data and you got them there every day? The other thing they were doing, they were blaming the children for not coming to school. And Horace had pointed out to them a couple of years ago, your staff is not coming to school. And I talked about months back when COVID happened, teachers were absent during COVID. They had to get substitutes for teachers that were absent during COVID. How do you have 8 teachers not come to work on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the next week, not the same 8 teachers not come to school on the same days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? There's something to that.
And if I may, you asked a question about curriculum for teaching our history. From the listening tour, we've discovered that there's an inability to teach any curriculum. Okay, English language arts, physical education, music, the arts. It's just a problem in Philadelphia. There is a problem across the board with teaching any form of a curriculum.
I think
so. That's why you're having your 0%. And as quiet as it's kept, the numbers are going up.
I think that we have too many people that are not teachers. People who have taken a job, just like back then during Vietnam, they took the job because they were trying to get away from going to war, right? Going to the draft. And so I think it's the same thing. People need jobs. And it's sad that across, because I'm talking to people in other cities and states too, the same problems with our children. And if we don't get back to teaching our children, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that this is what I know, that we must go back to teaching them. And as I said, inside and out, God has made a way a lot of times for funds to be given to schools and communities. A lot of times people that are put in charge of those funds are not doing the right thing. We were at a school and we saw all these books, the most incredible books that Black authors wrote for Black people. And it was thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and we know that because they charge so much for the books when they're giving them to a school, right? The tables were breaking because the books were so heavy on them. Not one of those packs were open. Not one of so when I say hundreds and hundreds of books, I'm saying that they should have been given out during a summer program, and they were sitting there on the tables that were breaking down because those black books written by black authors were not given to the black children.
Okay, so you talked before about K through 6 versus K through 8. Why is that important?
Well, it's important because, see, before it used to be K to 6, and then they redesigned the school and put the 7th and 8th graders in there. And now what's happening is stopping the physical and mental growth of the 7th and 8th grader. That's one issue. Then the other issue is the how the K to 6 is what they're getting from the 7th and 8th. You know, so we
The
behavior. In other words, we would say they're creating mini gangs. You know, from now you have a 8th grader that's influencing a 4th grader or a 5th grader
or first grader.
And we had a couple of instances in Philadelphia where, they had attacked a couple of people. These young children have attacked a couple of elderly people. And the grades were from like the 4th grade to the 8th grade. So here again, you're introducing somebody that normally shouldn't be introduced to in a K to 8 setting. That's why we say bring back junior high school, 7th, 8th, and 9th. If nothing else, we always try to promote, if nothing else, through all the ills, through all the problems, that you have to separate these children. If nothing else, you have to separate them. You have to put it back to the way it was. In Philadelphia, they still have the buildings. They still have the infrastructure to do that. They still have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the key issue, to force them to do that, because now we just had a superintendent spend $100 million on curriculum, and the curriculum is not the issue. The issue is this teacher's absence, the inability through overcrowding to teach any kind of curriculum, and then also the warehousing of these children. These children, like, as for lack of a better word, my daughter would say, are being babysat from kindergarten to 12th grade. It's just as simple as that. Everybody can relate to that word. So that's what we're having here in Philadelphia. And it's still, through all this, only 10% of the schools are doing well. And that's the 10% that always is being highlighted.
Always.
When people say, well, we have enough of the bad, let's hear some of the good. Well, here again, it's only the 10% of the good that you know. And we always say at a meeting, what about the rest? Period. I was the rest at one time.
I was the rest
at one time. So here we are. What about the rest?
Right.
And we grew up with junior high schools.
Continue. You grew up with junior high schools. Finish.
We grew up with junior high schools. That's how you found out who you were. Mm-hmm. You were able to create something. We had cooking. We had sewing. We had opportunities where we could see something that we created with our hands. Right? They had shop
and junior varsity sports. You tapped onto your talent in 7th grade in an organized sport venue, and now it's just basketball, but and we don't even have baseball anymore. We used to have baseball here. We have 13 middle grade sports, but the way the schools are configured today, only say 10 to 15% can truly take advantage of those 13 middle grade sports. But here, back to the original thing with the school board, we don't know what they're thinking. It's just
nobody talks. We talk. They listen.
That's it. So we don't hear how they're thinking, and this is the result of a one-sided
conversation, right?
Yeah, well, it's not even a conversation. I don't even know what you call it.
Wow. All right. Either way, I wrote a book. It's called F.A.C.T, Fundamental African Centered Thought. The subtitle is Lessons and Solutions for African People. And in it, I say that we need self-sufficient control of all of our basic human survival needs. That's our food, clothes, shelter, education, medication, and self-defense. And I think it's one thing to haggle with the public school, and I think there is a place for that. But at the same time, I also believe that we should have not only our own schools, but our own everything.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. What is your opinion on this idea of complete self-sufficiency and reducing our dependency on other people?
Well, if I may, and we hear that all the time, you know, people like yourself saying we should be self-sufficient. The only problem is the numbers. Right now, we're looking at 70,000 black children in a school system. And I say a combined school system of public and charter schools. It's great to have your own, but 70,000 children. That's the initial number we're starting off with. Here again, we have schools in our community that if the parents in the community could truly understand, see, we can't even count on the city officials here because it's all about the vote with them, you know, and then at least 90% of them are black, and it's sad. You know, it's sad. But here it's no reason why a school that only has 500 children come in at 0% with 8 different grades. That's the sad part. It's 8 different grades in that school, and we have a number of schools like that. So yes, we should be our own, but the start out number is $70,000. I mean, 70,000 students. How do you make space for and control 70,000 children?
I believe, and we grew up. We both families. My father had a business. His father had a business. We believe in having our own. We've had our own. We've had our own businesses, right? We believe in that. But when you're talking to people who grew up in a system, even though it's been broken, and they've been broken as a result of it, God forgive me for using that term when it comes to people, but that's the fact, right? And so now you're asking them to step away from everything that they know. So those that believe that it's time for us to have our own, that's what we must do, right? But in the meantime, while having our own, we've got to still pull the others along. We've got to create schools outside of the physical building. When I think about our ancestors, before they had a building, they met. Before they had a building, they met under a shade tree, right? They met by the water. Wherever they could gather, they gathered. What I'm told from the ancestors is that we are to go back to the basics for new beginnings, that we are to remember, reconnect, reclaim, and recommit. Who do you reclaim? Your children. We've given our children over to other people for far too long. And many of those descendants of those people that's in front of our children, our ancestors raised them.
Sure.
They took care of them. They fed them. They made sure that they were okay. We've got to go back to re-owning ourselves. It's not about asking for freedom. We are free. Indeed. It's time to step up, stand up, speak up. I ain't fighting. I ain't in no battle. I ain't never struggled in my life. I am declaring, I'm claiming, and I'm decreeing what I want to happen. On Thursday, we are opening a peace center in a school. It's an intergenerational, international space because we have all the equipment to connect with the world. As the world is changing, as this global situation is different than it was, we are in a sanctuary city where children and families are here from all over the world. People don't know who each other are, those coming here and those that have been here. It's time for us to connect and treat each other with the respect that we deserve. But also we can, through our peace centers, we can connect with you in New York or wherever, people in other cities, other states, using this technology, right? Have workshops, classes, seminars, in other countries. We are able to connect with other countries. I was at the UN for 10 years prior to COVID. I'm with the International Peace Federation. To be able to connect people that have skills, like what you're saying, we need our people to hear from different voices. I'm not saying anything other than it's time for us to just what I said, go back to the basics for new beginnings. How do you improve the quality of life in home schools and communities if you don't do something that you know how to do?
Right. I got a question from Be Grateful for Everything in the chat. Wants to know if you've heard of their Pop Gus Lacey, who's supposed to be a big time activist in Pennsylvania. Does the name Gus Lacey strike a bell?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. So last question, because we are at the end of our hour.
Okay.
If people want to support you, how can they do that? You have an email, a website, or something you may want to give up?
We have email, and
Okay.
it's I'm gonna give your email
Go ahead.
because mine's is too full. HR Clouden at Gmail.
Mhm.
Simple as that. HR Clouden at Gmail.
And spell Clouden for me, if you would.
CLOUDEN.
HR
Brother,
Clouden at
brother,
Gmail.
may I say
Please,
it's our
please.
time? It's our time. It's our time. It's our time.
Okay, I just put the email in the chat. I would encourage everybody to reach out to Mama Gail and Baba Horace, and so they can continue to fight, so that we can get the education of our young people right. And on the last note, Baba Horace, you mentioned 70,000 children. I think once we do start our own institutions, we're not going to get everybody, because some people believe that the other man's ice is colder.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to get all 70,000.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that shouldn't discourage us from having our own.
Never. Mm-hmm.
All right. So I definitely want to bring you both back on again in the future, and then you can give us an update, and perhaps maybe you can lay out and give us some more of those school board meeting stories, because I know you have plenty.
Yes.
All right. Either way, I want to thank you both for joining us. It's been a really good hour. The response has been really good, and we're going to bring you back on again soon. So thank you both for
Peace
being
and
here.
love.
Thank you.
Blessings all. Blessings.
Right.
Bliss.
All right. Peace.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thanks again.
You as well.
All right. Peace.